Focaccia bread is an amazing recipe to have in your back pocket as a home baker. It's incredibly tasty. Everyone loves it. Super versatile as far as flavors go. Very simple to make. And the best part, in my opinion, is that it's very forgiving. One of the most forgiving breads out there. You could miss a step here or there throughout the process, and it would still turn out okay. It's great if you don't have a whole lot of time to kind of micromanage or baby your dough throughout the day. There's even been times when I've accidentally overproofed my sourdough country loaf. I've just turned it into a focaccia, and it was wonderful. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the start to finish process on how to make focaccia bread. So let's get started. So to make focaccia, the dough is actually quite easy, and it's very reminiscent of how you would make like a sourdough loaf. So I'm going to start with 332 grams of warm water. And I'm going to add 450 grams of flour. I'm using bread flour for this recipe, but you can use all-purpose or whole wheat, whatever you have available. And I want to mix this just until it's fully incorporated or integrated together. I am going to do a 20 to 30 minute auto lease on this. And what that means is that I'm just going to let the water and flour sit together before I add any other ingredients. And this just helps with the gluten development. However, this step is optional. If you don't want to wait that 30 minutes, you can continue on with the next couple of ingredients we're going to add. Okay, so it's been about 20 or 30 minutes now. My dough has had a chance to do its auto lease. Again, that's an optional step. But the next thing we're going to add is our salt. And I'm going to add 10 grams of salt. And salt is important to measure out because depending upon what kind of salt you use, if you're using like tablespoons or teaspoons, the amount of salt can vary based off if it's flaky salt, if it's kosher salt, if it's fine grain salt. So that's why I'm measuring out 10 grams of salt. All right. And then the next ingredient is our sourdough starter. This is an active peaked sourdough starter, just a normal sourdough starter. I'm going to add 100 grams of this to the dough. $103 grams, close enough. All right, so I'm going to set that to the side and mix this together. I'm going to use my hands. It's important to make sure the salt and the starter are just fully integrated in with that dough. And so what I like to do is just press my fingers into the dough, kind of push it through, and then do, a little folding action, bring it over itself. All right, so I'm going to let this sit now for about 30 minutes. Just for reference, it's 9 a.m. on a Saturday right now. So I'm going to put my cover on my bowl and let this sit for about 30 minutes. And then I'm going to come back for folding and adding the olive oil. It's been about 30 minutes, maybe closer to 40 minutes. I'm going to add our last ingredient, which is olive oil. So I have my scale here. I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of olive oil, which is about 10 grams of olive oil. And I'm just going to pour it right on top of my dough. Yep, 10 grams. So now that that's on top of my dough, just like this, I'm going to do a stretch and fold. So I'm just going to pick up one end, put it down, pick up the other end, put it down, pick up this end, put it down, pick up this end, put it down, and then just kind of set it in the bowl like this. Now, this is just going to sit in this olive oil. It's going to get integrated into the dough. And we're going to add more olive oil later at a later stage. But for now, we're just going to let this sit. And we're going to do 2 more folding sessions before we make a decision on if we want this to go in the fridge overnight or if we want to make this a same-day focaccia. It's been approximately 1 hour since we did our last stretch and fold with the olive oil. Now, I'm going to do a coil fold. You can do a stretch and fold if you want, but I prefer to do coil folds at this stage. And to do that, you just kind of scoop it by the side and fold it on top of itself. And I'll do that a couple times. All right, so it's been about another hour and a half. You can see the bubbles starting to form a little bit on here. I'm going to do one more coil fold really quick, and then I'm going to let it rest for about 15 minutes. And then I'm going to walk through the different steps to either bake this today or hold off until tomorrow. All right, so my dough has had a chance to rest after my last coil fold. And now I need to decide if I want to bake this today at some time or bake it tomorrow. Now, there's pros and cons to each. The pro of baking it today is that it's delicious. You can have it sooner rather than later. You know, it doesn't have to be a multi-day process. It will still taste great. The pros for putting it in the fridge overnight and baking it tomorrow is that it's going to develop more of a sour taste or just a deeper, richer flavor that you get from a slower fermentation. So I'm going to bake this one today. And if you are someone that is going to bake this tomorrow, all you would have to do is cover it back up, put it in your fridge. Make sure your fridge is nice and cool, obviously, and that's going to slow the fermentation down. And then tomorrow, when you decide you want, decide on a time you want to bake this, you would just pull this out a couple hours in advance and do the step we're about to do now. So what we're about to do now is oil up our baking sheet with some olive oil. And you want to use this is not a 9x13, but a 9x13 if you have one. I'm going to be using this deeper baking pan, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it with parchment paper. And so to do that, I'm just going to crumple up my parchment paper and so that it fits more easily inside this deeper baking pan. So now that I've got this placed in there, I'm going to put 1 more tablespoon of olive oil on the bottom. And again, this is approximately 10 grams of olive oil. I'm going to drizzle it across the areas where I'm going to have my focaccia bread dough. And then I'm going to take the dough, plop it in here, and what I want to do is just pull it out and stretch it out to the corners of the pan. I'm using a pan that's a little bigger than 9x13, so I'm not going to use the entire surface area. But if you are someone that's using a 9x13, for this amount of dough, you'd want to get it all the way to the corners. All right. So now what we're going to do is let this proof inside of this baking pan. And what we're looking for is lots of bubbles and for it to expand a little bit. So once that happens, we're going to put some more olive oil on and then any toppings that we want to put on top of this focaccia. So it's about 1 o'clock right now on Saturday where I am. So I'm going to let this sit for 2 to 3 hours and check back on it periodically throughout that time. and hopefully bake it around 4 p.m. I'm going to set this aside and just let it be for a couple hours, and we'll check back in once it's done proofing. All right, so we're back. It's had a chance to proof for a couple hours. It's 4 o'clock my time. Again, I started this process at about 9 a.m. with the auto lease, and it's had some time to proof in this pan. I see some nice air pockets developing that are kind of bubbling up and then causing it to elevate upward. And so I'm going to finish this off before I put it in the oven with the last amount of olive oil, which is another 10 grams. And then I'm going to do a savory topping with this today. So I'm going to do some roughly chopped red onions, some roughly chopped garlic, some dried rosemary, fresh rosemary works too if you have it, and some kosher salt. I'm going to put a list of all of my favorite topping combos in the description below. And if you have a favorite topping combo that you like, if you could share with us in the comments, that'd be great. So I'm going to put the last 10 grams of olive oil on here and just drizzle it over the top. Now, here's the fun part. You just take your fingers and just poke it into the dough. Make sure your fingers touch the bottom of the pan, and it just kind of helps get everything soaked in those peaks and valleys, so to speak. And then we can start putting our toppings on. So I'm going to put the onions on first, and some garlic. It's a lot of garlic, but I'm a garlic lover, so it's no problem for me. Dried rosemary. And lastly, a little bit of kosher salt. Okay. And a couple more onions. So I'm going to bake this at 425 degrees Fahrenheit or 218 degrees Celsius for approximately 20 to 25 minutes, or until it's got a really nice golden brown color to it. All right, so it's finished baking, and as you can see here, it looks incredible. I wish I could share with you how my house smells right now. It smells so good. That's probably my favorite part of making focaccia, is just this. I feel like the smells get amplified when you're using olive oil to bake. And so let's take a look at this. It's had a chance to cool for about 15, 20 minutes. And so here it is. You can see all the onion, garlic, rosemary, salt, and it's got some little pockets of olive oil on it. Looking at the underside of it, it's nice and crispy, like we'd expect from that olive oil we put underneath the dough when we first laid it down on the pan. So while that bakes, that fries it up really nice on the bottom, which gives it a nice crispy texture. And I just wanted to say, at the beginning of the video, I mentioned that this is a really forgiving recipe. And so some of you might be thinking, well, if it's so forgiving, how can you add so many steps and the timing and everything? Well, that's if you have like an ideal perfect situation. But there's been many times when I've made focaccia where I've just kind of forgotten about it, or maybe you've only done 1 or 2 folds, or left it out for a little longer than I would have liked, and it turned out great still. So it's a very forgiving recipe, and it just tastes great no matter how bad you kind of fall behind on steps. So with that, please give me a thumbs up or subscribe if you like this content. I would really appreciate it. And thank you for watching. Happy baking, everyone.